Well, hi, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining today's webinar. If you joined the first of this three-part series, this should be a natural progression for you. And if this is your first time, welcome. As you can see today, we'll be talking specifically focusing on dispatchable location. That really becomes a very critical part of our 911 plans and tends to be a big part of the meetings that we have with clients when we're talking about this. And we'll touch about that a little bit here. So Jake, if you don't mind, we'll get started. So today, again, we're focusing on the second of the three-part series. If you missed the first one and you want to go see that recording, you can see the address there, neweratech.com/videos. And coming up at the end of the month, we'll have the third of this series focusing on next generation 911. And at the end of this event, I think Jake and Fletch will go into a little bit about what that content will look like. So for today, we'll have our introductions here in a moment. Again, we'll focus on dispatchable location. As I mentioned, that tends to be a big part of these conversations. The location discovery services that are referenced there tend to be a big part of this. So we'll talk about what we're seeing today. And from Q&A, if you have questions, please put them in the question box or chat. If we don't get to them today, they are recorded, so we'll send those answers to you after the event. My name is Joe Paquette. I'm the Director of Business Development here in the Northeast. And one of my responsibilities is to bring content like this to our users. We work with partners like 911 Inform, and then allow our customers to see what those offerings are and how they can impact our customers. And Mark and Jake, I'll let you introduce yourselves now, please.
Yeah, thanks very much, Joe. Appreciate it. And thanks to all the folks at New Era Technology for inviting us in, excuse me, for this webinar. It's an important topic. So I'm Mark Fletcher. I'm Vice President of Public Safety Solutions at 911 Inform. And joining me today also is Jake Damphouse, one of our channel managers.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks much. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Sorry about that, Jake. And because Mark won't, I do want to let you guys know on the call here today, Mark is listed as the inventor of 14 U.S. patents covering next generation 911 call processing, and he is the author of Carey's Law. So for us, we're really excited to provide that level of credibility and knowledge to these events. Jake, if you don't mind moving forward. So for those that perhaps are new to New Era or new to this webinar series, very quickly, New Era, 40 offices worldwide, over 1,600 employees. And as you can see here, really the takeaway for me is in those different practice areas, we can absolutely help you from the initial design education standpoint through fulfillment and project installation and post support. And on the next slide, you'll see a little bit of those core areas. Today, we're focusing on collaboration, UC, and security. But within this topic, as an example, when we have those meetings we referenced, we're touching really different parts of the company. So it could be physical security, the data security group, infrastructure. So just know at New Era, in those different areas of the company that we have resources to help. So on the next slide is probably my favorite part as we open this up. It's gathering the information from the registration questions that you guys completed when registering for this event. And I like to compare it against perhaps your peers. So question one was, does your organization allow remote workers with telephony? 6 out of 10 are saying, yep, we're doing that today. Second question, does your company deploy hard phones for remote workers? And this is a pretty significant number. Almost 4 out of 10 are saying that you do. And that'll be something that's important, I think, as we go through this presentation. Do these remote workers have different extension numbers for these remote devices? And luckily, no, 100% no. So Next question. Is your organization alerted when a remote user dials 911? I'm not sure if this was a surprise. I guess maybe just the number, but only 10% of you are saying, yeah, we know that's happening. And next two questions, I guess probably wouldn't be a surprise, but have you looked at other E911 solutions in the past? 100% are saying yes. And somewhat surprising, I guess, and maybe that's attributed to our partners today, but have you looked at next generation 911 solutions in the past? And 100% are saying no. So I think that will lend itself really well to perhaps the third webinar in this series. So with that, Fletch, I'm going to turn it over to you, and thank you as always for participating here.
Thanks very much, Joe. So dispatchable location, that's the key word. That's what Ray Baum's Act is all about. That's the new language. That's what got everybody nervous. The full story behind all of this is Carrie Hunt. Carrie Hunt was a mother of 3 in Texas. She went to a hotel in Marshall, Texas, to meet her estranged husband at a motel for visitation rights with the children. When she got to the hotel, she was attacked and basically stabbed 29 times in the bathroom. Now, her oldest daughter, Brianna, who was only 9 at the time, knew immediately to call 911. And as a matter of fact, she attempted to do that a total of 4 times. Each time she tried, she received a fast busy because the PBX, like most systems, were set up to require a 9 before any outside call, which would require 911 to be dialed. Thank God the kid knew to dial 911. So Carrie's father, Hank Hunt, started a change.org petition, which is something I saw on my Google alerts, and I read the story of what happened, and I reached out to Hank to provide him a little bit of support from a major manufacturer. I was working for Avaya at the time. And over 4 years, we were able to accumulate 578,000 signatures on that petition. He was looking for 100 to go to his local congressman. And after 4 years, 2 months, and 16 days after Carrie's death, I had the extreme privilege of standing in the Oval Office with the Hunt family and Brianna as Carrie's Law was signed into the law of the land of the President of the United States. So you have to remember, in December of 2013, there was no law in Texas that required anything, including access to 911 from a multi-line telephone system. There was one county that had something of a law. But that didn't stop them from going to court on a wrongful death lawsuit. And a local Texas jury awarded the Hunt family, or Carrie's estate, $41 million in a wrongful death lawsuit. Now that's significant because at that time, no legislation existed locally, statewide, or federally. That hotel wasn't required to do anything other than what they did, yet they were still found liable to a large degree. Now you've got 2 federal laws and 10 years of awareness out there. What do you think a jury's going to do today? So Carrie's Law went into existence in February of 18th. That requires direct access and notification. 2 very basic, simple things. That's what Carrie's Law was about, simplicity. Ray Baum's Act came in when people decided, well, we need a little more detail. We need that on-site notification to be a dispatchable, actionable notification. And we want that going on-site and to public safety. And we like to see a callback number added to that as well. Now, a point I want to raise here, A callback number does not mean it needs to go to the device that made the 911 call. A callback number means that a phone call needs to go back to somebody at the location. And the reason for that is I may have made a 911 call, collapsed, and the phone might be off the hook. You might not be able to call me. I might have called you because there's someone with a gun that walked in the building and I hung up. I don't want that phone ringing. Or maybe I called you because there was a fire and I hung up and I left. Calling back that phone's not going to do any good. On-site notification makes sure that other people are aware of the emergent event. The callback to those people is designed to get additional information. Now, Raybaum's Act comes in two flavors, chocolate and vanilla, if you will. So Raybaum's 1, as we refer to, that went into effect on January 1st of this, or 6th of this year, and that requires that dispatchable location to be sent to public safety and on-site. And coming up on January 6th of 2022, that's being extended to wireless devices. Important point here. This does not mean cellular phones and cellular 911 calls. That's a different proceeding at the FCC with location requirements on the PSTN due in, I believe, 2025. The only time this would apply to a cellular device is if it's running a soft phone client and it's on your corporate VPN as an extension. Then the Raybaum's Act and Carey's Law would apply to that cellular device. Best practices have the cellular devices detect the 911 call and send those call out through the carrier networks to make sure that routing takes place properly. Solutions are now coming in place to deal with this, but to keep it on the safe side, that's the general recommendation at this point. As we said, a dispatchable dispatchable location is the street address of the caller plus additional information that allows them to be located in a reasonable amount of time. It doesn't mean reporting the room number. It doesn't mean reporting the cube number. Help, I'm in cube 2C231 doesn't mean anything to first responders who've never been in your building before. It means something to local internal security. And that's why the on-site notification needs to be delivered what they call contemporaneously. And that's lawyer speak for at the same time as the call. Lawyers got to make money. What can I tell you? So here's the timeline of the law. And the reason I show this back to 2013 is because laws didn't actually go into effect where you had to do something until January or February of 2020. But you had a law signed in February of 2018, and the incident happened in 2013 on December 1st. And the reason I bring this up is because this has gotten a lot of press. This has gotten a lot of traffic. This has gotten a ton of mileage. You can't say you didn't know about this. And regardless of what the law says, any lawyer will tell you that there's a window of liability, and that's arguably back to 2013 for public awareness on this. And there's a legal duty of care to provide a safe environment. And this stretch between December and February 2020 is when a local jury is going to say, you should have known. And I didn't have to, probably won't be an excuse. Again, I'll go back to the Hunt case. No law. And just for not being able to dial 911, forget about the location reporting, forget about the on-site notification, forget about everything else. Because Brianna couldn't dial 911 direct, $41 million. That's significant. So Feb 2020, Kerry's law went into effect. And what's interesting was the point that most people miss is it applies back to that February 2018 date as far as systems it applies to. So while it didn't go into effect for 2020, if you had a new or upgraded system after February of 2018, you have to be compliant with the law. Ray-Bombs Act 1, same thing, went into effect in February of this year, but applies to systems new or upgraded all the way back to 2018. And when Ray-Bombs 2 goes into effect in January, that applicability, gosh, and I practiced that word for 5 minutes, the applicability of that law will go back to PBX's new or significantly upgraded back to 2018. Significant upgrade, by the way, is a major release in software. Dot releases don't count, but a major release, 4 to 5, 6 to 9, whatever, that counts as a major release in FCC language. Don't nitpick that. You can nitpick that all you want. Oh, there weren't a lot of features in it, even though it was a dot release. It doesn't matter. You're going to be arguing against a jury that's not going to be looking at the law. It doesn't matter if you violated the law. It's worse if you did, but just because you didn't doesn't mean you didn't have that duty of care. So be very, very careful of this. Location discovery, understanding where the device is. 911, what's your location? That's how every 911 call is answered. 911, where's the emergency? Their job is to dispatch resources to where you are. Your job as an IT administrator, PBX, is use whatever tool you have available and what I call art location discovery. There is no one thing that you can plug in the network and understand where devices are. It's a combination of forensics. It's 911 CSI. It's using the layer, which is layer 2. It's utilizing the network layer info, or layer 3. It's utilizing the application layer, layer 7. And we're going to show you how we've added some additional things to fine tune that data. And it's looking at the data that exists in the network. That could be data in the MLTS, in the PBX, or the network. It could be LDAP information, or even Active Directory entries. These are all clues to what data can be utilized to determine where a device is located. So let's look at a couple of mechanisms, what we can use and how we use it. Everybody wants to do layer 2. Everybody says, oh, I can discover it down to the switch port. But the switch port is actually located in the switch room. And if you look at where the switches are cabled to, it's cabled to everywhere in the building. So really, when you look at the switch port, the fact that it's on port 17 really doesn't tell you much other than it's on port 17. If you don't know where that is cabled to, you don't know anything beyond the data closet. Now, you can go out and create cable records. Some people actually do, and you can maintain those. So now if I'm on port number 3, I know I'm in classroom 5913. Okay, that's great. I've got a cable record database that my 911 solution needs to look at. One side finds out what data switch port you're on. The other side looks at the database to see where it's cabled to. This is easily done through SNMP query on the data switch. If you don't have cable records, though, if you don't have databases, this is not wasted information. I still understand what switch you're attached to, and that's going to give me the building for sure. It's going to probably give me the floor. And because a data switch can only be cabled to 300 feet from its source, I've got a perimeter of a fairly small area of where that device is. So don't worry that you don't have cable records. Be great if you did, but if you don't, that's okay. We still know a little bit from this. Now we can take this further, and what most people do is we use what's called layer 3. We use the network parameters. We use the IP address schema. And what we do is we break the building down into logical zones. And we have our data network feed IP address ranges out. If I'm in the yellow zone, I'm going to get this range. If I'm in the green zone, I'm going to get this range, red and blue. Now I've got a little more finite area because my data switches could be servicing, the one over on the left is cabled to the yellow, the blue, and some ports in the green. Well, let me put those two together. I know you're in this subnet, and I know you're cabled to this particular switch. Those together give me detailed information. That's better than if I just had one. So I've got a medium level of granularity. I've given up a little bit. I don't know the exact cube, but I know that my certainty level has been improved from very low to a medium level. And this is what most people try to do. But once in a while, there are problems with extending subnets. So we take this another step further. And this is really where we added the magic of the 911 Inform application. Now, let me say right off the bat, nobody uses an application for 911. And that is absolutely true. And this is not a 911 application. The application we've built is a tool in the tool chest. So let's walk through a use case of how we use our tool. Bob comes in and moves his IP phone, and he plugs into the network. That creates a network event. We know that that registration has happened. We actually know the building because of where he plugged in, but I don't know his specific location. The 911 Inform application is made aware of this event and that it was Bob, and I've got a database record for Bob. I know his email address, I know his extension number, and I know his phone number of his smart device. Now, he plugged in a digital or an IP phone. That IP phone doesn't really know where it is beyond the building, and there's nothing I can do to ask the IP phone where it is, but Bob's got that smartphone. Bob's got his laptop. Both of those devices are very intelligent. Chances are both of those devices can provide more information. So I send an SMS link to Bob. Hey, Bob, click on this link. It'll load up a web application. And when he does that, it will turn on the location services in the laptop or the smart device or his tablet. And using the same technology that Google, that Uber, that Domino's and every other location technology uses, he's going to get a location back, which is going to be fed back to my application after he confirms where he is. Now I've got some more data. I can look at that information, and now I can perform some actions with that. If Bob is located inside of a building, I know where Bob is. That's relevant. And I can show him a floor plan of that building because I'm dealing with an internal IP address. And I can place that dot that I got back from his smart application right on the floor plan of where he is. And if he's external to the building, I can show him a Google map view and let him click on his house. So this allows me to reverse geocode that information and adjust his address in my internal database to be his home location. Now, this is very relevant because if his device makes a 911 call, I now have the information that's got a high level of granularity and a high level of certainty that I can get to the 911 solution. So we've created this internal database link without having to store it publicly because it's not needed yet. And my application has the ability to do real-time transmission of location information with the 911 call. And I'm going to kick it over to Jake to pick it up and show you how that follows through, how we use our logic internally to decide what we've got and how we're going to get that to public safety.
Yeah, thank you, Fletch. So to kind of move forward, obviously we've talked about those different methods of how we can obtain that location information. And if we put all those methods together, we really do get that net solution that is a high granularity and high certainty. And the important thing to remember here is we're just trying to gather that dispatchable location information so that if one of those devices does call 911, we have that information to pass along. Now, before we move forward, there's a couple things. I know it's kind of a unique scenario there where we are pinging end users or IT end users to update the location of those devices. And obviously things are unique from a day-to-day basis. So we have some parameters in place that, adjust and make sure that those devices are being updated. So if a device is moved and we get that registration event, what we can do is send reminders or escalations if the end user has not updated their location. If they've waited maybe 10 minutes, there hasn't been an update, we can then send that user another update and say, hey, this device is still out of compliance. We need that location to be updated. If further there isn't any more response, 10 more minutes go by, we can then escalate that up to an IT help desk or their superior. And that's completely customizable by your organization as far as those escalations and reminders. But we do have those policies in place to make sure that those devices don't get untouched. And I think the other thing that we've talked about so far that is really important is that these records are kept internally, and that the big benefit for that is we can update as we go. In the legacy environment, basically each device record had to be pre-provisioned before that device made a 911 call. So if you really think of it from the standpoint of, that the public network needed to know the location of that device before it calls 911. The 911 center has a database that they then look up via telephone number and try and associate that telephone number with a device location record. With the way that we do it and keep all these records internally, we can send along that information with the call. It allows for a quicker timeline as far as location updates. And it's also a cost savings. In order to keep all those location records before externally before those calls were made, each one of those devices or zones, however it was set up, needed to have its own DID that had a location registered to it. Because of the way that we are able to basically send that information along with a call, we can use a single DID to eliminate all those costs that come along with having hundreds, even sometimes thousands of those DIDs for the individual device location records. So moving on to that location record that we keep internally, we are our database is in the AWS Glove Cloud. It's FedRAMP certified. It's a high resiliency cloud instance where we're basically keeping those records internally until they're needed at the time of a 911 call. Again, the benefit of that is it's secure. There's no lookup on the public safety side. It comes through. And really, we're keeping the extension number and the end user's cellular number or email address to contact them to do those location updates. Again, that's all stored internally and secure in the AWS Gov Cloud.
Hey, Jake, I have a question for both you guys, and this may not be particular to 911 Inform, but perhaps you can just shed some light on experience here. Question is, not all companies with MLTS have 24/7 personnel for on-site notification. So what should they use for a callback number?
So there's several ways of addressing that, depending on the environment. If there isn't a way to answer a callback, then there isn't a way to answer a callback. You just don't have the ability. You could ring a night bell and then be able to dial a pickup code. If you've got the ability, you need to do that. And again, that's something you can work with your local public safety teams on that particular environment. So I've seen schools that have taken the monitor in the front lobby, and when a 911 call happens, that monitor is alerted with a floor plan and an indicator of where the 911 call came from. So if there's no way to call back the building, it's at least a dispatchable point where somebody can go to for more information. I could be the only person in the building and passed out. It doesn't say you have to have somebody there. It says you have to have a mechanism. And again, there are many, many ways to make a call back ring at a number of different devices that are all pretty unique to each install.
Great, thank you.
And again, just to kind of pick up. So obviously all that stuff is stored in our AWS Gov Cloud. So if we look at, again, those discovery capabilities, and we can look at this in a few different environments, those known environments, buildings that are within your organization, public environments, if you think of someone working remotely at a Starbucks or, in a public area, or those work from home users. When Bob registered his phone, 911 Inform sees that registration event to the PBX. It basically sets off a workflow that notifies us we need to find more location information. So then we set that workflow off to contact Bob. And as Fletch was mentioning, those internal registrations, we will send along a floor plan, and we will know that they are internal because of those different data points that we've collected. Now, those digitized floor plans are part of our service. It's something that we provide on install, and they really serve a couple different purposes. One being the update and location feature, as you can see on the screen, provides that end user some landmarks and references as far as I'm actually in this room. If it's someone that doesn't necessarily know the layout of that building that well, they can confirm it. For those users that are external, whether they're at home, Starbucks, in a hotel and traveling, we don't have floor plans of those places, obviously. So what we do is send a Google Maps view. And basically the same way that you would get an Uber and you open up the Uber app, it shows you that blue dot. It's got that location information already there. We take that information in, and then we, on the back end, convert that into something that can be sent when a 911 call is made. Now, the most important part of all this is, to us, a user is really just a user. We don't necessarily care if they're internal, external, working from home, traveling. Really, the only difference in all of this is what information we're going to ask them to use to locate their device. It doesn't incur any additional cost for them to be working from home. They can move that device and become flexible with that device. So, kind of last couple points here. We're talking about getting that information and different ways to collect it. But now if we look at what information is actually being sent to 911 and the E911 methodology versus the NG911 methodology. So we actually snagged a picture of a 911 call taker's screen. And if you really look into this, there's quite a bit of information, and it varies depending on which screen you're looking at. Some of this is what resources they have available to dispatch to emergencies. But really, the information about where that call taker is located is just this green and black box. It really only provides 2 lines of information that are related to location. The first being 1704 Route 34 East, which is the basic street address. And then in this red box right here is that what's called address line 2. Address line 2 is basically 20 to 30 characters of text-based information that can be used to send that dispatchable location information. So this is the spot where floor 3 wing or west wing room 315 would be translated. And obviously within 20 characters of text, a lot of it's going to be shorthand and it may not be able to be as descriptive as possible. With NG911, the screens that they have the ability to look at are multimedia, interactive, two-way communication based. So that middle screen there is really the floor plan with relevant emergency assets. There's AEDs, fire extinguishers, where the doors are, and not only will it highlight the location of where that emergency call is coming from, but it can also add things like the best access route to that emergency, which door will be the easiest door to access that emergency through. And if that emergency call came from a room that was seeing something happen a couple of rooms down, they can then change that emergency to the actual location, and all of that information will be changed. The additional point to that is this is able to be sent throughout the emergency response. So this is also sent to the fire, law, EMS that are responding to that event, as well as your internal security teams. So really what this does is bridge this communication gap between your teams and public safety. So it's that bi-directional communication piece that really is that single pane of glass feature. All that information can bridge that emergency gap between your teams and public safety. If something were to be developing throughout an emergency and someone on site had information that may be useful to public safety as they're trying to arrive to the scene, that can be communicated. And finally, if you just think of all that information that's capable of being passed along, it just provides additional situational awareness, whether it be a medical emergency, a fire, active shooter and location information. All that information now is on one single space with a communication path between public safety and your enterprise. And really, this was something that we had talked about, and I'll for sure hand it over to Joe as far as those discovery meetings and how we can kind of walk through your specific use cases and how, a demonstration based on that use case may help communicate some things.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. I'll add to that. The meetings we're having, excuse me, sorry about that. Meetings we're having really build upon those last few slides that you guys shared. So this discovery meeting truly is that 1 hour or so conversation between stakeholders in your organization and the team here. And what we find very often with our clients is that the existing knowledge base and sort of priority levels can differ between different departments. So with physical security, network security, operational folks, trying to get all those folks on the same page moving in one direction is really a great outcome from this meeting. So again, the goal will be here to identify where we're at today, what that state looks like, determine what the end goal is, and if from that you'd like to see what a bill of materials would look like for a 911 inform solution, we could easily provide that. In advance of the meeting, we'd send over a brief survey link, and you could fill that information out, send it to multiple parties at the company, so we could collect that data beforehand and be prepared for that call. And I think, Jake, if I guess I'll fast forward a little bit to the next event that's coming up.
Hey,
But
Joe, real quick,
yeah.
just before you move on, you brought up great points. One person that gets left out of a lot of these discussions is someone, a representative from your local public safety team, not internal, but the actual emergency communication center, the 911 PSAP. Their job, they're paid to save your folks. You should really get their input on what information they need, and then show them the information that you can give them. And when you do that, you create this wider collaborative environment, and you really come up with a good actionable solution. So don't be afraid to include them. Maybe not on the first one, but as you get down the road, definitely make sure they're involved with what you're doing. So you don't get to the end and have them go, oh, well, wait a second. We don't need any of that. Or we need this stuff and haven't given us this.
Fletch, that's a great point. I think we just recently had a meeting with a university here in the Northeast, and one of the action items was to them to reach out to their local public safety organization in their town, and it's exactly what you were talking about. So, yeah, great point. So, Jake, to give it away a little bit on the next slide, I'm thinking specifically for campuses. I think next time we'll be talking about some of the next generation capabilities related to, users on campus on a cell phone. Is that right? Is that part of what we'll be talking about next time?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to kind of cover quite a few different things, whether it be connected building technologies. We see a lot in the K-12 space with advanced SIS integrations that involve, a digitized reunification process, notifications within the within the district, as well as to the capabilities of notifying parents and guardians. Checking in missing students, and then also the drill capabilities that 911 Inform can provide. We've seen a lot of interest from K-12 in that, they can run drills throughout the platform. They don't necessarily have to involve public safety, but they can basically document their procedures. And I know there are some states that require submissions for those documentation biannually, sometimes quarterly, that those drills have been done and communicated with the state. So, those are all capabilities we'll cover in the next session, whether it be the connected building or some of the SIS stuff, straightforward to K-12. And then also, as you mentioned, the notifications of cellular 911 calls.
Great, thank you.
It's interesting. A lot of people, and it showed in the survey results, a lot of people looked at E911 solutions. That's what the news has been all about. But we're talking about next generation 911 solutions. And I think a few people get afraid of that. They start looking at the multimedia, they start looking at all the whiz bang stuff, and there is a ton of it there in next gen. That's what it's all about. And they immediately start seeing, or they equate cost to that. But next generation 911 takes a very legacy, archaic infrastructure that's expensive to operate and IPifies it, if you will, right? Or brings it into modern technologies. And now it's about taking data that already exists and using networks that already exist to deliver that information into systems. And while you might call your average 911 call taker and say, do you have next gen 911 services? And they say, yeah, sure, I wish. They may not even realize that they're actually using next gen 911 capabilities on the back end that they're not even really seeing. But I can tell you that 93% of the population today, 93% is serviced by a 911 center that has a next generation 911 feed. And what they're using that for today is to get explicit location information off the cellular network. And that's brand new technology that just got rolled out maybe 2 years ago. And in 2 years, they went from 0 to 93% of the population being served by a center with that capability. Now, what we're doing is we're riding that new technology to deliver our information. So don't be fooled that, well, I talked to my buddy Bob who doesn't know anything about this. He's been there 20 years. The one thing I found in this industry is the people that have been around the longest are not necessarily the people with the most current information, but the people that are just learning it have the most current because that's what's being developed today. So this is very, very relevant. Now, I just want to make sure people understand that and don't go, oh, next gen, we'll never afford that. Next gen will actually put money back in your pocket.
Awesome. Thanks, Fletch. So as we wrap up, folks, first of all, thank you so much for attending. And Fletch and Jake, I truly want to sincerely thank you for all the efforts you've taken on this with us. It's important for us to get this information out to our clients. So I really want to thank you guys for all of your support in these events. Before we wrap up, I don't know if you guys have any closing statements you wanted to make.
No, I just wanted to thank you, Joe, and the New Era team for really working with us. As Fletch had mentioned, you guys are really taking the initiative on this topic, and we really do appreciate the work that you have put in, Joe, as well as the whole New Era team.
Great, thank you guys.
Yeah, I mean, you came to us with an idea and a question. Hey, can you do a webinar on 911 for us? And we came back as, well, let's do 9 of them. Let's do 3 different verticals and 3 different webinars to make sure we really go in depth. And to pull off 9 webinars in that short time was not an easy thing to do. And you guys really stepped up to the plate. And I want to thank you for that, because it's really getting that information out there in a way that I don't think has been done before. And we're creating a lot of thought leadership out there in the industry. So that's going to equate to save lives.
Awesome. Thank you, Fletch. Well, all, thank you once again for joining today. If you have any questions, please reach out to your New Era rep. Otherwise, you can see the email there. You can also contact me directly. And on the post survey form, again, if you want to take advantage and schedule that meeting, just indicate that, and we'll reach out to you soon. So with that, folks, have a great day. Thanks for joining.